All right, so this video is for one of my viewers who is contemplating leaving a spouse with children involved. I've done these videos before, but my channel, you'll just scroll forever. So I just want to give a divorce survival guide, having gone through it myself. Now, I went through it from a male perspective, so understand, ladies, that I may or may not be privy to some of the inside caveats of what it means to be a female going through family court. But this is designed, my advice here is tailored to both people. I think this is very good gender neutral advice. And I'm going to give you some tips on how to maximize the benefits for yourself. So first thing you need to know, if you're married and there are children and you're considering leaving your spouse, the one thing that I want you to get from this video is this: find an attorney, retain the attorney, file for divorce. Those three things. You find an attorney, retain that attorney, file for divorce. That should be your first steps. Why? Most states have a cool down period where after the divorce is filed, it's usually a minimum of 30 days or 60 days, sometimes even a year or 2 years before you can even begin to start the next step of a divorce. Which means if you're in an abusive situation, when you finally decide to press eject, you still will not eject for a minimum of 3 to 6 months. Minimum. So just imagine that situation. If you wait until the plane is about to hit the ground and then you press eject, it's going to be too late. Now, just because you file for divorce, you're under no obligation to move things forward. You can file for divorce and it can sit there for however long. If nothing ever comes of it, nothing ever comes of it. So there's that. So just because you file for divorce doesn't mean you're now carrying through it. It's not a one button push. It is a process. It is a process. So if you are thinking about divorce, you should file for divorce while you think about it. So that is just from my experience. And this is why in divorce court, you do not ever want to be the second person to go find an attorney, because that first attorney is going to be the architect of everything about what the divorce is about, etc., right? The petition is always read before the response. Okay? So you want to be the architect of what may or may not come of your future. Okay? And that's why I say find an attorney, retain the attorney, file for divorce, get that shit done. Okay? It is imperative that you do an attorney, because I can promise you 100%, Google doesn't know shit about you. It knows data about you, but it doesn't know all of the nuances required, okay? Not even an attorney is going to know all the nuances of your situation, but they're pretty damn good. And I can tell you, family court is really convoluted and really complicated. And that's precisely why someone, a professional lawyer or attorney, can get away with charging hundreds of dollars per hour for their work, their effort, and their energy. I can assure you there are a lot of good family attorneys who throw themselves upon the apparatus and they themselves suffer all of the emotional roller coasters that their clients go through. These attorneys, they go through the grinder, and many family attorneys can't make a lifelong career of it because of the emotional roller coasters. So it's difficult even for the professionals involved, let alone the actual individuals filing. And so all that to say, at the heightened level of emotions in your life, that is not the proper time for you to be trying to Google what your future should be like. Just not. Now, in terms of retaining the attorney, there is this misconception or sort of innate fear that that I can't afford an attorney, right? Because you might hear these retainers of, sometimes it's 1,000, sometimes it's 2,000, 2,500, sometimes it's 5,000, right? Or 10,000, right? If you go, depending on how high up in the food chain you go. But the thing is, it's not, you're not going to McDonald's, right? Most of these attorneys, especially ones in business for themselves, if they have their own practice, they'll work with you. Like you can say, look, I don't have that kind of cash right now because I'm in a situation. Can we work on something, right? Most attorneys will, because they know at the end of the day, they're going to get their money sooner or later. And trust me, when you have all of your assets and all of your bank accounts and all the money laid out in front of 2 attorneys and you didn't pay your retainer up front, they're going to get the retainer in the process, right? So, and as harsh and horrible as that sounds, for those who are stuck in a situation, that's probably the optimal and ideal way to go. I'll say this too: attorneys are more likely to waive the upfront retainer for women than they are for men, and that's just how it is. No other reason than more times than not, men can often afford the retainers. And more often than not, women come out financially ahead. The statistics are 85% of men come out of divorce court in a worse financial situation than when they went in. Women win substantially more often than men. So there's that, unfortunately. So if you're a man, you really cannot afford to be the second one to an attorney. You really cannot afford to not retain an attorney, because I can guarantee you the longer you go without, you will make a series of unfortunate mistakes that makes it more expensive for you in the long run. Believe me, okay? Because I've been in and out of family court. I've been through the cycles multiple times with somebody who's vindictive. I have scars, right? I have my damage from it. It was not a one and done, okay? And shit is still tense now, even 8 years after. So, yeah, find the attorney, retain the attorney, file for divorce, and go on to the next phase. Now, this is the next phase, okay, when it comes to kids, okay? Several things is, number one, okay, by the time the divorce is being finalized and everything is coming to an end, a court is going to look at, okay, where have the kids been this whole time? What is their lifestyle like? And, how can I explain this? A court is going to act to conserve the lifestyle and situation of the children in the end. So I'll give you a good example. When my mom divorced my dad, it was a long 3-year battle because my dad was an obstructionist, right? She moved us 150 miles away from my dad. And so in Texas, the standard possession order is every first, third, and fifth weekend. My dad was a stickler and made her drive us down there every first, third, and fifth weekend. His interest seemed more in getting information about our mom from us than information about our lives from us. We would be in the car and we could set our watches to it. 15 minutes, he'd be like, by the way, like that's how we knew he was about to ask about mom. By the way, right? But I'm digressing, right? So for 3 years, my mom kept us 150 miles away, in a town where her parents lived, so she had a support structure there. And in the end, the divorce was finalized, and my dad had, fought her for custody and all that, and the judge said, well, where have they been? They've been in Lufkin for 3 years now. 3 years is a long time. No, they're going to stay in Lufkin. Not going to yank them, force them to restart their lives all over again, right? So courts generally don't do that. Now, why am I telling you this? Several things. Number one, when you first start a divorce, and why I say it's so important to get everything filed in the beginning, in the absence of a court-recognized agreement. There's no such thing as kidnapping your children. There's no such thing as visitation terms. Yes, you can agree to stuff initially. You can be like, okay, well, you can have them every other weekend. How about that? Sure, fine, yes. But just because you verbally agree to something doesn't mean that that partner can't change their mind and decide to keep the kids. So if you do all that, then your partner can be like, yeah, I just want them for this weekend, and then they can drive off with the kids. And there's really nothing you can do about it. Why? Because law enforcement can only enforce an existing agreement with the court. Like, that's by design. So just because you verbally agree to something, your partner can run off with your kids and not give them back. And all the law, the only thing a police officer can say is, the kids are here? Yes. They are with you, the father or the mother? Yes. They don't appear to be in any danger. Are they nourished? Okay, they don't look malnourished. There's no bruises on them. Okay, everything seems fine here. Is there an existing agreement? No. So then you're not in violation of anything. Have a good night, sir. We've conducted our welfare check. Or madam, right? So you want to make sure that right off the bat, there is an agreement in place. Bam, day one. Without that, that's what allowed my mom to haul us 150 miles away from our life and everything that we knew for the sake of her own security system. And, I look back on it and I don't want to say I resent my mom for it, but regretfully, I don't think she really knew what all her options were back in 1991. So there's that. We can't go back and relive our lives. So know that wherever the kids are at the end, that is where they are going to stay. So don't fall for any kind of dialogue like, well, I think it's fine. Like so for instance, like in my case, right? So I left, and I left my son with her because she's the mom, and at the time I was drinking the Kool-Aid, and I thought it was me, and I blamed myself for a lot of stuff because I listened to her toxic dialogue, right? And towards the end of it, I was like, you know what? Like, I really don't think she is a fit parent. And this was like towards the end. I was like, what if I get custody? And the attorneys were like, well, good luck. Like, you didn't start out that way, right? So you don't really get to change your mind saying, oh, she's I'm fine with my kids staying with their mother because she's their mother. You don't get to turn around and say, wait, she's not a good mother. Well, why didn't you say that in the beginning? Right? So I got screwed in that sense. So if you have kids, this is my finest piece of advice. After you've done those first 3 steps of find the attorney, retain the attorney, file for divorce, stay with the kids. Do not leave your house, period. If you have to live in a tent, you live in a tent. You do not let your kids out of your sight. It's gonna suck in the short term, and it's probably not what you want to hear. But again, make sure you check with your attorney on this stuff, right? Because I can only give generalized advice. But you don't, my advice to my friend and everybody that I've advised, if you have to buy a tent and live in a tent in your yard, then that is what you will do. You demonstrate that you are dedicated to your children beyond a roof, if that's what it takes. That will go a long way. Okay. Finally, what court is not. Okay. There is this effect that going through divorce makes people behave in a narcissistic manner, even perfectly fine normal people. The process of divorce forces you into a narcissistic corner because it forces you to think about yourself and your best interest ahead of everybody else. Unfortunately, that's how it is. It doesn't make you a monster. It is the structure of the process, and you must know that and understand that going into it. You're not going to like the decisions that you have to make. You're not going to like yourself as a person because of the things you have to say and do in this process. But it's not you. It's the process, and it's going to force your partner to do the same things. As a result, you're going to feel like you're being a monster and angering your partner. And that may very well be valid and real, but understand that's just the process and how it is, okay? And what court is not. This whole bullshit of tell it to the judge, I'll take you to court, I'll see you in court. There's this tendency to say stuff like that. Well, we'll see what the judge has to say about that. I'm documenting this, you know. I'm going to take, this is all going to appear in the court. No, it's not. It's not. And this is why it's so important to have an attorney. Everything you say and do cannot be used in court, nor can anything they say or do, with few exceptions, if it's an issue of neglect or abuse, and the police are called, or CPS. But the back and forth bullshit between two people, judges do not give a fuck. None, zero fucks given. So what's actually going to happen? This is exactly what's going to happen. You will be sent to mediation. So you will go to court to hear the initial petition and the response. Say, okay, there's a petition for a divorce. And they look for things like, okay, this isn't an actual legit marriage. Okay, there are children. These people do exist. And this is not a fraudulent case of divorce, that kind of stuff. They're just going to confirm who you are. They're going to send you to level 1 discovery, which is a lot of paperwork, a lot of bank statements, documents, emails, all of that stuff. None of it the court gives a shit about. That's all for the purposes of mediation, so that your attorney, their attorney, and the mediator have at their disposal a nice stack of records to help them guide the mediation process. So, you're not digging all this stuff up for a judge. This is not evidence for your acquittal. This is not evidence for their conviction. No. When you go to divorce court, you will go to mediation. If mediation fails, you will go back to mediation. And if that mediation fails, you will go back to mediation. And if that mediation fails, if you manage to piss the judge off, they're going to make a bunch of decisions neither one of you like. Because the one thing the court is they are not a cudgel for bickering spouses to wield against each other. They're not. They're there to protect children who are in danger. And the court system is going to see to it that both of you are so fed up and sick and have an absolute despicatory, or I can't think of a proper word, disgust. There we go. You're going to have such an absolute disgust for the process that neither one of you ever want to come back. And that's the goal they're going for. So understand that the process is terrible by design, because otherwise they're not going to reward this process of, well, I'm going to take you to court. Oh yeah? Well, no, I'm taking you to court, right? It just goes back and forth. And so what the court is going to say is, you two come to an agreement, or we're going to make sure that you two don't ever want to come back here. And they're pretty good at that. They're very good at that. So, like I said, all of your threats, all of their threats about showing shit to a judge or taking you to court and all of that, it's bullshit. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to go to mediation. It'll be you in your room with your attorney, them in their room with their attorney. And you're going to have to come to agreements with this person. And it's totally fine. If they're being unreasonable, you have the right to walk out. And this is a huge piece of advice here. Plan on 3 mediations. 3 at a minimum, possibly 4. And here is why. It is a very, very common tactic for attorneys where whenever they're looking at what's best for you, see, attorneys are not there to split things fairly. They are there to get the best outcome for you. Fairness is just not, it's not part of the process. It's not. So part of the strategies are the things that they know that would be a difficult ask in mediation, they won't bring up. And you'll get through the mediation, things will be signed, y'all will be headed to the courthouse to finalize the divorce. And oh, last minute there's a problem, right? And you're like, I'm so close, especially if you are the petitioner, okay? If you're the one who petitioned for the divorce, right? But it goes both ways. And so, what should you do in this situation? First, you should expect this situation. No attorney worth their salt wouldn't do this, right? So, you expect it. And when it happens, you say, well, okay, fair enough. I'm fine with another mediation. Let's go ahead because I want to make sure we get this right the first time. And this is true. This is true. It is better to remediate and remediate and remediate before you finalize a divorce. Because once the divorce is finalized and completed and certified, you do not get to revisit anything that happens before that, from that point on. So if there is a problem or spat, like an issue of negligence or unfairness or we'll say the whole stacking of ammo process for narcissists, they wait until after the divorce and they'll be like, well, I could always, why don't we just go right back to the judge and tell the judge how you really were? Nope. Nope. So everything within the four corners of the decree, what they call it, all your business better be done, settled, and dusted when the decree gets finalized. So you don't get the chance to go back. You don't get the chance to go back. You can't even petition to modify the decree, is what it's called. If you don't like anything about the decree, you can't just go and request a modification all willy-nilly. Like, you know what? This doesn't work for me anymore. Nope, we're not doing this anymore. We're going back. Nope, you can't do that. Not without what's called material and substantial change. And that really is what it really is. It's not a willy-nilly decision. So if you file a petition for modification and the court has to approve it, they'd be like, no, get the fuck out of here. Most of the time. So make sure you get all your business done. And that's why I say, plan for 1 or 2 additional mediations and be ready to go on that. Because then I'm making, hold on, I'm on the phone. Once it's done, it's done. And so what you want to be, what you want is your partner / opponent. They're not actually going to want to go back to mediation, right? Because any detail that was, all the big details will have been addressed. Most of the time, to them, it's not worth remediating, but they're going to try and play that card with you, thinking that you also don't want to go back to mediation. So if you've planned for it and prepared for it, that gives you the leverage. One last thing I'll leave you with. If they're being unreasonable during mediation, walk out and clock out your attorney. They say they're not being reasonable. You can go back to court. You can tell the judge they weren't being reasonable. I want to reach an agreement with them. I think we can remediate, but they were just being completely unreasonable, and I felt like it was a total waste of time to negotiate with somebody who was being unreasonable. I'm making a video. Please wait. What do you need, sweetie? Hello?
How about Poppy with Queen Marmia?
We'll do all that in a minute, sweetie. Okay? I've got parenting. I am being haunted. But yeah, because what you want to be is you want to be the one that says, I'm in a bad situation with this person. I want out of this situation. I've got kids, so I want a fair and equitable agreement for the kids. I'm not going to take any shit. I'm not a pushover. I want to be fair. I'm not interested in making this a game about win or loss, but I also want fair, and I want to make sure that everything ends up fair for my kids. You do what is in the best interest of your children. And you do it in such a way where you can be the one to provide it. That is what you do. You do what's in the best interest of your kids, and to be the one to provide it without uprooting them from their existence. That's what you go for. So to sum it all up, find an attorney, retain the attorney, file for divorce, know that everything is going to mediation, plan to mediate at least 3 to 4 times. Hang on, I'm making a video. Please close the door. Thank you. So, file for divorce. Find an attorney, retain an attorney, file for divorce, plan on going to multiple mediations, be exceedingly conducive for those extra mediations that you're going to know and expect and plan for in the end. And if they're being unreasonable, walk out. Walk out. There's no reason to spend $200, $300, $400 an hour to end up with a subpar agreement. And you can tell your attorney ahead of time, if they're being unreasonable, just walk out, right? Because if they're truly being unreasonable now, you don't use this as a tactic, okay? It's like the equivalent of the parents finding out somebody's, causing trouble, right? Who the problem kid is. They're being the problem kid. You're not going to stand for it, and you're not going to burn through a ton of attorney fees for their bad behavior. You can just tell the judge they were being unreasonable. My attorney was on the clock. No, I'm not going to hang around for that. I want what's fair and equitable for my kids, and I'm not here to reward my partner with a lavish lifestyle or to meet their every demand. No, I don't really give a shit. I just want what's best for my kids. I think we could do another mediation. I'd like to try to remediate. I'm all for it. If they are, I want to reach an agreement with them. And that's the way to do it. Anyways, I'm clearly out of time. I hope this helps. Please like, comment, or share. I'll see you guys on the next video.